What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Awakening World. It's going to be a wonderful weekend. We are going to be collaborating all weekend long with the Evolutionary Leaders Network. And that means that we have tonight and tomorrow night our co-host, Reverend Deb Muldahl, who we love to call Rev Deb. So this is Rev Deb, and we're going to be hearing from her. And I want to welcome everybody who is watching on Facebook. Thank you so much to John and Summer Raymer. They got us out to over 100 Facebook groups and pages, and also Alan Steinfeld and his YouTube channel. So if you're watching us that way, welcome. Glad to have you with us. And I want to invite you to come on into our Zoom room. And it's really easy to do that. Come be a part of the Global Peace Tribe. Go to globalpeacetribe.com, and just click register. And what happens is it's really simple and easy to register. That way we get your email address, of course, and you're going to get the links to all of our shows for the rest of the year. And we do 3 or 4 shows every week. So for example, this is the show you're about to see tonight. Then tomorrow night, we've got more evolutionary leaders coming to us, as well as amazing musical artists. We have our house musician, Omashar, who's always with us. And then, for example, tomorrow night, we've got Lakshmi Del Sesto and Dr. Mama Ivy doing a sound healing. And then on Sunday, it's the next generation, the artists catalyzing evolution, who are going to be sharing what they're doing to create a new world. And then on Monday night, a very special event. I'm part of the Illuminate Film Festival. It's happening this weekend in Sedona, and then we're taking it virtually. And I've invited some of my favorite luminaries to be with us. Marianne Williamson, Matt Kahn, Neil Donald Walsh, Gary Zukav, and the Twin Ray will all be with me live online Monday night. So definitely join us, become part of the Global Peace Tribe. All right. We're going to get to some wonderful guests. We're going to learn all about how Team Light is co-creating our future. But we always like to kind of start a show with some music. And there is the wonderful Omashar, our house musical artist, with a boiling hot water bath that he might jump into after the ride, take a little dive. Welcome, Omashar. You're muted still. I love that our house musical artist is still muted.
Of course, because I have nothing to say. It's all about in song.
Take it away, brother.
beginning when we were one, life was fun. The human race had just begun. When you were children, you laughed and played in the sun. So tell me now, where have you gone? Come back and play with the divine. You're part of me, walking through time. I didn't leave you in the dark. You are the jewel in my heart. We could never be apart. Oh. I yearn for you endlessly, a field of dreams in between. You are the children of the sun, all of you. The world awaits your point of view. So come back and play with the divine. You're part of me, walking through time. I didn't leave you in the dark. You are the jewel in my heart. We could never be apart. Whoa.
Thank you, Brother Omashar. Let's all twinkle him. All the people I've got on camera. Thank you, Jeffrey, for leading our dance tonight. It's good to see our Global Peace Tribe friends.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And a wonderful way for us to support beloved Brother Omashar is by going to Bandcamp and buying his music, getting his albums. And you know, there's that blank spot right there. And one of these days, pretty soon, it's going to be filled with the new album. And the new album is called
Lightness of Being.
Lightness of Being. All right, just like the lightness of his voice right now. So let's all go to Bandcamp and support Omashar. Thank you so much. And you really do get us off to such a wonderful start. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. We still can't hear you, Omashar.
How did that actually sound? Because I didn't have the original sound on. I pressed, they changed all the settings. I updated my Zoom, so.
The sound, your song sounded well, sounded good.
Good. Thank you.
Right. All right. With no further ado, I get to bring on one of my absolute favorite co-hosts and a wonderful, wonderful friend. This is Rev Deb. And Rev Deb, before you introduce your guests, why don't you share with us a little bit about the Evolutionary Leaders Network and then our vision for this weekend?
Happy to do that, and very happy to be here with you again, Scott, and with the Global Peace Tribe. And Omashar, thank you. That was just beautiful, as always. You always set the right tone.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So I'm excited about this weekend because it's a weekend of evolutionary leaders. I'm Reverend Deborah Moldow, and I'm the director of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle, which is an initiative of the Source of Synergy Foundation. And the evolutionary leaders are visionaries from many different domains. And I'm always excited to introduce them to the Global Peace Tribe. And many of you know their work already. For instance, when the evolutionary leaders put out our first book, Our Moment of Choice, which has chapters by 43 different evolutionary leaders, somebody said to us, "Oh my God, that's my bookshelf." So it's always exciting for me. It's exciting for me to hear Kristen Hoffman singing in the opening, and she'll be hosting on Sunday morning with a number of our evolutionary leaders who are members of the Artists Catalyzing Evolution Synergy Circle. And the Synergy Circles are a project of the evolutionary leaders where different individuals come together around a common interest. And of course, Kristen and Keishi Chai, who you've met on this show as well, beautiful dancer, they started this wonderful Synergy Circle, and you'll be meeting those members on Sunday morning, those of you who can join then. So meanwhile, we have...
There's the poster. Since you're talking about it, there's the poster.
Yeah, there they are. And all
They
those
all
radiant
are.
faces, and all
Right.
of them members of the evolutionary leaders. And you can see what we're about at evolutionaryleaders.net. And so tonight and tomorrow night, and there's our website and our book. Tonight and tomorrow night, we have this wonderful theme, calling Team Light as we co-create our future. And it's really what the evolutionary leaders are all about. It's about bringing together people who are committed to making this world a better place. And not only in the incremental way that good people have been doing that forever, but actually manifesting this evolutionary leap that is so needed right now. Our planet is facing so many crises, and I know our guests tonight are going to talk about that, and they're going to talk about their particular role in addressing this time that we're living in. And I'm starting to see all of this massive breakdown as what's creating the cracks for the light to get through.
Right.
One of our guests tomorrow, we have book authors whose books are just coming out. So they're all going to be really excited to share with you. And one of them is Laura George, whose new book is called The Light. And she's the one who inspired this theme of Team Light. And I always love the name, the Global Peace Tribe, because I know that every one of you who's listening to this program tonight is a member of Team Light. You all want to see the best and most beautiful aspects of humanity coming forth in this time that's requiring our greatest creative abilities. And everybody gets a chance to shine in making this world a better place, a place where there is a future for the coming generations. So tonight we get to start. I love doing these programs because I get to invite on all of I can't say my favorite evolutionary leaders because it's like having 240 children. I just love them all. But these are very special people that you're going to meet tonight, and I can't wait to bring them on and to share their brilliance with you.
Okay, well, let's bring up Anodea and then Joe.
Hello, everyone, and
Welcome, Anodea, Judith.
Deborah. I am so glad to be here. Just delighted.
Now,
Well, I'm
in a
really
moment,
excited to have you, Anodea, because you are like one of my go-to big picture people. You have your particular niche and your brilliant work that you've done in bringing forth the power of the chakras, especially, and empowering people to really bring forth the best in themselves. And I know you have some new work that you want to share with us as well tonight. But I also just love the way you speak about where the world is today and how we can move forward and answer the call of Team Light. So I bring to you all Anodea, Judith.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I am so really delighted to be here in this discussion. There's nothing that I like talking about more than evolution and where we're going on the planet, and calling in the light to offset this really, scary, dark time that it looks like we're navigating. And I think the call for me is calling me out of this. I read the news way too much, probably like many of you, and bite my nails and tear my hair out and want to throw things at the TV and stomp around the room. And then I try to get busy. Then I try to get into action. And what I see is there's this picture being painted of, a social unraveling and an impending collapse over the next decades, which in many ways is very likely and probable. And at the same time, with this big picture focus, when we look at all these terrible things we're reading about, we have to say beyond that, what the hell is going on? Why is evolution doing this right now in 2022, when we ought to be more enlightened than that? Why do we have this violence? Why do we have this racism? Why are we turning the clock back on women's rights? Why do we have this war in Ukraine? Why do we have, the climate change being ignored when everything is so obvious? And I believe it's because systems need a disturbance in order to evolve. When things are in equilibrium, systems theory teaches us that they don't change very rapidly. In fact, they're very hard to influence. And I know so many of us feel powerless. I have myself, like it's so much bigger than I am. How do I make a change? Well, when a system is in disequilibrium, when it's becoming unstable, when it's falling apart, when it's collapsing, that is when it is easiest for small influences to make big changes. Now, one thing you can see is people are disenchanted. This is more on the negative side, that it's easy for somebody with a computer, somewhere else in the world to set out conspiracy theories and start a whole movement. That's sort of the dark side of it. But at the same time, the healers, the light workers, the visionaries, the movers and shakers that haven't been able to get traction will be having a chance to have more influence as we go through this shift in organizing principles from what I call a shift from the love of power, top down, one person on top telling everybody else what to do, to an organizing principle based on the power of love, which is more collaborative. It's moving from a chain of command to a web of connection. It's working together, collaboration, cooperation. It's, using our vision. It's being imaginal cells in the emerging butterfly, recognizing each other, vibrating with each other, resonating, saying, yes, you're an imaginal cohort, and you're a democratic cohort, and you're a artistic cohort, and you are, working on this level and that level. And we find our synergy together when we recognize that. And in that, we are giving birth to the new humanity. It's just that where we're going is so different from where we've been and even where we are now, that much of the old system has to collapse to make room for it. And so I think that's a way of holding what we see as we go down this rocky road of everything that's falling apart, is hold that in the context of this is making room for something new. And while the news is filled with the negative things, as I travel the world and talk to people, people are waking up everywhere. People are doing amazing things. It just doesn't get the press because the dominant paradigm is getting all the attention. But as that falls, as the ship sinks, you know, people are going to be jumping onto the lifeboats and reorganizing this, what I say, a new organizing principle based on the power of love. So I think that the last remarks I want to make is that what we are being asked to do is to grow up on this planet. We're having our initiation into our planetary adulthood. And that's where our freedoms, which have been hard fought, get balanced with responsibility. But what enables people to take responsibility? Is it rules? Is it laws? Is it punishment? Well, that gets people to, quote, behave, but it does not evoke responsibility. Responsibility requires caring. So we have to ask, what gets people to care? And my answer is love. We care for what we love. You know, we care for our children because we love them. We care for our pets because we love them. I care for my garden because I love gardening. I care for, you know, my relationship. And it's really creating a vision that is so compelling, that is so exciting, that is so new, that is so engaging, that we fall in love with the idea and we want to join in and co-create it. And this vision can only be co-created. No one person has the answer, no one country, no one company, no one idea. It is diverse, it's a multiplicity, and it's co-created together, and we are making it up as we go along. And we need beings of light to co-create with. So I guess I'll park it there. Probably talk.
Beautiful, beautiful start, really. Thank you so much. And I love how, while acknowledging the really scary stuff going on in the headlines and in the world, I really like what you had to say. I had Reverend Michael on a couple of weeks ago, and he said something very similar. He said, don't worry about the old paradigm. It is naturally going to fall apart. Our job is to be building the new paradigm, to be building the new world, to be building the awakening world. I also wanted to acknowledge briefly when Rev Deb was talking about, oh, those are all the people on our bookshelf. For years, there's the biggest, fattest book on my bookshelf is Wheels of Life. And I know I'm sure a lot of our people have Wheels of Life on the bookshelf because it's like one of those books that's like a Bible. You know, everybody has autobiography of a yogi. We all have Seth Speaks or the nature of personal reality or illusions. You know, there's certain ones, and Wheels of Life is one of those, but it's so big. It's like stands out. So thank you for all that you've been doing for a long time to raise our awareness.
Wheels of Life came out 35 years ago.
I think I've had it for 34 of those years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, we're going to hear a lot more from Anodea, but I'm going to bring up Rev Deb to introduce our other wonderful guest.
Well, our other evolutionary leader guest, and by the way, I want to acknowledge you too, Scott, as being in the evolutionary leaders circle, as well as our guests tonight. I want to introduce you to Joe Martino. So Joe Martino, he's the next generation younger from some of the evolutionary leaders that were leading the evolution, way back in the last century and are still continuing to be our wise elders these days. But there's also a kind of a next generation evolutionary leaders. And one of the things that I really like about Joe Martino, and one of the reasons I wanted to introduce him to all of you is that he is committed to truth. And he has launched at least 2 that I know of, sites that are sources of news. And he will bring forth news that is not in the mainstream media. But what's special about Joe, in my opinion, is that he never does that in an accusatory way. The way some of the alternate news sites are very much like, stay away from the mainstream media lies and get the truth here. And there's a lot of fear in that. And Joe's approach is always, okay, here's some information. Well, here's some other information that you might be interested in. And you make up your mind where you feel you're getting the truth. So I'm very interested to hear what he's up to these days. And it's my honor to introduce you to Joe Martino.
Well, thank you so much for that interview. And it's great to be here. I have an opportunity. Actually, I said interview. I meant introduction. My apologies. But it's a great opportunity to kind of discuss these ideas with an audience that I think is very open to sort of connecting the big picture, as much as Anadea was saying, in kind of bringing together that big picture perspective. That is very much what we've been trying to do since we first started in 2009 with Collective Evolution, and then branched out with the Pulse, is sort of bringing this evolutionary lens to media, to information, to journalism, to discussions of transformation and what it's going to take to sort of create a thriving world, a future where we know we can kind of move beyond a lot of the scarcity and the competition and the limitations that we kind of have artificially made in our world today. And I kind of was, as I was listening to Anadea, I was thinking, it would be nice to build off of what she's saying, because she laid such a good foundation for a lot of what I would say. So in the spirit of sort of building upon that, we've been sort of looking at, I'm kind of fascinated by this idea of sociology, like what makes a society drive, what makes why do people think the way they do, and then why do we take the actions that we take, and those sorts of questions always made me look at what are essentially the drivers of culture. And when we ask those questions and you look at news and media and all these different things, you start realizing like we all have completely different perspectives about things, not just, based on our own unique personalities and experiences, but also what we're tuned into when it comes to information. And I think we're seeing in this moment in time, this massive degree of polarization, and this feeling that we don't know what's true anymore to some extent, because we don't know what to believe. We don't know what agendas might be going on. We don't everybody has a particular perspective that seems to be creating a very, very noisy landscape of trying to understand what is happening in our reality. And when we're trying to create a new world, you could say that absolutely, we don't necessarily need to understand the totality of the world we have today in order to create the new world per se, because we could sort of imagine and dream up what could be possible. But at the same time, we're sharing this world with a collective of people, so many of whom sort of have this very loud megaphone, yelling about the struggles and the challenges of today, and putting a lot of their energy, a lot of their intention, and a lot of their focus on the challenges of today. And I've found over the course of my work that it's been very helpful to sort of look at bits of information, look at bits of understanding that expands our perspective about what is actually going on, such that we can start getting to the core of some of the challenges that we face today. So instead of perhaps seeing some of our political issues as just a left or right, paradigm, and we got to vote for one or the other, maybe there's deeper world views and pieces of conditioning within our human condition that is actually creating that type of society and that type of reality. And by sharing the right bits of information that sort of shatter our perspective, or what I call the illusion about how our world functions, and it opens us up to understanding kind of the human conditional factors that are playing into why our world is the way it is, it gives people this sense of like, oh, okay, I'm a little bit more open to examining what a new future can look like, because my set energy and intentionality in that old paradigm is not as strong. And so we try and bring this, as Deb mentioned, we try and bring this sense of sort of playfulness and curiosity and wonder all steeped within a practice of presence and embodiment within our media. So we're trying to get people to pay attention to how a news story might make them feel, and what stories it might bring up for them, or what tensions, what discomforts, what different feelings, in essence, are associated with our relationship to what we're seeing in news and media, because there's so much information there, and there's so much there that also keeps us stuck sometimes. And when we're talking about evolution, sometimes we have an experience for such a period of time that once we've learned, and I think we can all see this in our own personal lives, sort of learned what we need to within that experience, another door opens and we can start walking through that. And so in essence, just to sort of cap this off, the spirit of embodiment and presence in our work and in our news and in our media is to say, have we learned all we need to learn about kind of this world that we have before us now, and sort of put ourselves in a position to let go and not be so attached, not be so held on to it, and watch as that door opens for creativity, for ideas, for the incredible things that are happening already, to continue to form as we build a new world. And of course, we have to play with all the things that come along with that. How do we love each other? How do we communicate well with each other? How do we respect each other? Develop all those skills and capacities so we can move forward. So I think I'll cap it off there.
Joe, I would love to ask you, can you give us an example of a little bit of information that shatters more of the larger view that we might be indoctrinated with? Can you give an example?
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the simplest ones is when we look at our existing political structures, we've kind of been told this idea that we have this system where you might have somebody who's, hey, I want to become a leader of a country, and they have absolutely the best of intentions, but really, when you start looking behind the scenes and you start seeing, the way lobbying works, for example, and the way that individuals continually over the course of time in our political systems are serving a very small few, while so many other people are in a position where our best, needs, I guess, or our hearts are not really in consideration. It's kind of this small few individuals that continually maintain power, and we're invited over and over again to participate in a full-hearted way in the way our democratic structures function. However, they're not necessarily responding to the deep needs of humans. They're not really taking into consideration what we actually would need to thrive. And so when we start to examine sort of the functionality and the lobbying and the corruption that exists within our political structure, we don't see it as just this terrible, evil structure. It's just, okay, well, this is why our world's not functioning. Look at the world views behind what's happening. Look at the human condition. Look at the way people are operating, the way people are thinking. How can we potentially use this system in the short term to get things done that we need, but dream up an entirely new system or an entirely different system that does take care of the needs of everybody. And I would say that's kind of one of the ways, in a very short example, how you can kind of look at some of the structures around us and really ask, are these producing a thriving future? And what would need to change within them for them to do that?
Beautiful.
But
Thank you.
I'd love you, Joe, to as Scott was asking, give us an example really of one aspect of our world right now where you feel that the news that we're getting is very skewed and is not helping us to find the truth, where there is a much broader perspective to be seen. What might be an example of that?
I'll say something that I know I can speak to extremely sort of accurately about, and that would have been, the Freedom Convoy here in Ontario, in Canada. Having spent, our team, between myself and my wife and a couple of other journalists, we spent 24 of the 32 days on the ground right there. I had built many relationships with, a number of mainstream journalists that were down there, spoke with them. I mean, these are some of the top journalists in the country here in Canada. And, really just having this moment where you're seeing something on the ground and you're seeing what's happening and you're seeing what's unfolding, and then you're seeing what is being said in the mainstream media about it. And they're two completely different pictures. And, you're going to have people who are going to have a very hyperbolic answer. And they might say something like, well, the mainstream media is just purely lying. It's all false ideas and this, that, whatever. But I would look at it a little differently. I would kind of say what they're really doing is they're showing you this much of the picture. They're giving you a 0.5% of what's happening, focusing on things that might benefit, this current standing prime minister and what he's trying to do. but there's 95.5% of the picture that's not being told, right? The things that make you emotional, the things that show this beautiful connection. If we're talking about creating a new world, what was absolutely fantastic about what was happening down there is you had an entire community of tens of thousands of people that came up within days. They were feeding each other. They had an entire little internal economy. They didn't, you know, they had their own security. They had their own, everybody was keeping all of the snow cleared off of the roads and the sidewalks. They were salting everything within moments of snow, right? The city was running all off of volunteer together, an incredible community of people just doing this with no, like there were so many beautiful things that happened that required no government, no organization, no, you have to do this. This is your role. I am telling you what to do. This is how it has to happen. People just came together and created it. And I still get a little bit emotional thinking about it, because it's like, I'm looking at the mainstream media story of it. And it's the story of racism and extremism and terrible human beings. And the literal opposite is the truth. It is the most inspiring story that I've ever witnessed with my own eyes. More beautiful than the days I spent in Standing Rock, which I would say, as beautiful as that was, paled in comparison to what was happening on the ground here.
You were making me think of Standing Rock.
Yes. And just to see what the story is, to see the way people treat the people that were involved in that convoy, their bank accounts frozen. This is not coming from a government or a media that is invested in truth, and that is invested in unity, and that is invested in creating a better world. This is coming from a government, for whatever reason, we can all come up with our own understanding of this, but wants to sow division and wants to sow a sense of destruction to some degree. I don't know why. That's, we always just be guessing. But the point is there was a huge, massive aspect of beauty and humanity that was not being told. And that's a disappointing reality.
We are so conditioned to our black and white lenses on the world that something is either good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no possibility that people who are on the other side are doing it from very genuine emotions and even, reasons that aren't getting reported in the media of our choice.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
Adea, did you want
if I may
comment
speak to
on
that just very
Oh, yeah,
quickly.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So yeah, it's within our work is this this invitation to, when somebody is having a different perspective from you, just as you said, Deb, like how do we, like, why do you believe what you believe? Like come to understand each other. Don't just debate your points back and forth, but how can we come to understand how we arrived at the conclusions we arrived at, and what do we actually feel about them? What does it really mean to us? What values are being touched within each of us when we examine a particular story, and see if we can find that common ground, that common humanity, and then have our discussions about our differences, right? But so, so often we're just kind of debating our points, trying to win. And I think this is a huge aspect of how we communicate with each other as people that needs to change as it relates to, our overall world and what's happening.
Thank you for sharing that. I have two thoughts, then I'd love to hear what Adea and Rev Deb have to say about it.
Well, it reminds me of a book by Rebecca Solnit called A Paradise Built in Hell. And what she did is she went around and researched both historically and things that were actually happening where disasters were happening, like Hurricane Katrina, when that happened in New Orleans, and the earthquake in Mexico years ago, all the way back to the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco, and all these horrible tragedies. And what she found, Joe, was just what you're describing, that people pitched together, they made meals together, they cleaned up, they self-organized. They rose to the occasion and created something new, but the media didn't report on it at all. Take Katrina, for example, the media reports on, people were looting. People were looting the stores. Well, the fact is they were hungry. The milk in the stores was going bad because it didn't have electricity, and they were going to give it to, there was a way that they were self-organizing. It wasn't it wasn't reported. So we get this negative picture of humanity, which is really not who we are. There are some people like that, yes, but it is not the bulk of where people are at. And it gives us a skewed understanding of who we are and where we are and what's going to happen as things fall apart. They think everybody's going to get out their guns and shoot each other. But I think there is another possibility that people roll up their sleeves and help each other.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's a great example.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm going to bring everybody back up again, and I have a thought, and then I want to ask a question. And a reminder to our audience, and I see, thank you, Kiki and Jeffrey and Karen, for some of your comments. Definitely want to get to any questions you might have for our guests. Let's talk about this whole polarization that's happening in our world. And I think, we've all heard that, in any given moment, we have a choice of love or fear. And it's almost like on a macro level right now, our choice is, are we really choosing oneness and to see the divinity in all and to go beyond our ego and the right, wrong, good, bad reality, which has been the primary paradigm, and move into the oneness, move into that state. And so my question, I guess, is twofold. Do you think that that is really kind of the great choice that humanity is at right now? And are you optimistic? Or to what degree are you optimistic, and to what degree are you concerned? So I'd love to hear from each of you on that.
Well, I guess I'll start. I'm both optimistic and concerned. I'm optimistic in the long run. I think that we are going through this difficult birth, and we are going to give birth to something wonderful and amazing that is going to just blow all our minds. I think about a pregnant woman, and if she was, isolated somehow and didn't know what pregnancy was, and she started going into labor, she would think she's dying.
Mhm.
And she had never met a pregnant woman, didn't know where babies came from. She would surely think she's dying. And then if someone said, well, you're going to take something this big and you're going to bring it out an opening that small, she'd think she's dying. She'd think that is impossible. And what I see in the world on the negative side, these are contractions in the birth process. And what those contractions do when a woman is giving birth is they take one thing away, they contract here, but they open somewhere else. So when we have rising gas prices and we have a contraction in the transportation industry and people are not flying or driving as much, well, that's actually opening a kind of reorganization. And that I think that we are giving birth to a new humanity. We're giving birth to our new selves, a new way of life. Birth is painful, birth is messy, and it's inevitable that we go through that. But there's, scarcely a woman alive when she holds that brand new baby in her arms that says, I wish I hadn't done it. It is just something miraculous when we produce that. And I think I have a saying that evolution is the God's way of producing more gods. So I think what we are invited to become is more aware, more godlike. On this planet, we have the power to, blow ourselves up with nuclear weapons, to change the gene pool, to overheat the climate. These are powers on a godlike scale, planetary scale. But do we have the maturity to wield those powers wisely? What does that take? And that's the initiation. But part of the challenge of the initiation is, can we create a miracle? And I think it's going to take a miracle to rebirth humanity. But I am ultimately sure that in the long run, that's going to happen. It's just birth is a messy, messy process.
Oh, that was beautifully stated. And I love your analogy to birth. Thank you. It's kind of a tough act to follow, but Joe, I'm going to ask you if you'd be willing to take a shot at it.
Yeah, for sure. And again, very well said. And I'd love to sort of build a little bit, like in the spirit of collaboration. We kind of look at things in a very similar way. A lot of the sort of the challenges that we're facing, the upheavals, the loss in the system, what you might call this meaning crisis that people are moving through, where we feel very detracted from our reality. We feel very disconnected from it. We're not sure if we can make an impact on it. We see the mental health crises rising, and it's this question of, well, how do we get out of this? Like, what's missing? What's going on? And we've kind of been looking at what is a potential ecology of ideas, a mixture of practices, a mixture of themes that people can think about that and embody that might help us move through this chaos or this difficult time in a way that sort of increases our chances in the long run of sort of landing at that beautiful future, but also, potentially having it not take quite as long per se. And I don't mean to say that from the spirit of a lack of patience, but more so if we commit to bringing some of these capacities to really be with ourselves and be with each other and really embrace a spirit of curiosity, of playfulness and change, I think we can move along a little quicker. The challenge with a lot of this stuff is there are so many of us, and we're all at very, very different places in our journeys and lives and the way we see things and what we respond to. And you could call it a gift in a sense or a curse. And for me, I say that about myself in the sense that in one hand, I'm trying to find a way to speak to everybody, but in another hand, that's like silly because you're trying to speak to everybody. But I can't help but watch as my consciousness tries to look at what are all the different ways in which people are engaging with the world, and how do we put something out there that might open them up to some form of change or something that they might be able to embrace to sort of create that more beautiful future. So that would be my attempt at trying to build on that a little bit. I am optimistic. I do think that it is going to be a very challenging sort of road ahead, but I do think there's a lot of things that we can do to make things a little more comfortable for ourselves and work together a little bit better. And it's a long picture, but that's kind of like what the re-release of my podcast is really focused on, is sort of exploring some of those questions.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joe. Well, Rev Deb, as usual, you've brought in some really wonderful presenters. What are your thoughts about that question? To what degree are you cautious or concerned? What degree optimistic? And how do you think we can shift out of that polarized way of thinking and into a more oneness consciousness?
Well, I am optimistic and concerned on different days. So there are some days when I'm just in despair that humanity is heading straight for the iceberg without any real means of either putting on the brakes or changing course. And when I feel that way, I just have to be with it. And then I have other days when I see what people are bringing forth at this time in our evolution, the kind of thinking like the oneness that Joe was talking about, and all the creativity of all of our evolutionary leaders, that I know that something new is being birthed on the planet right now, and that we're all part of that. And that even if we can't see how that can solve our problems, what we know for sure is that our problems can't be solved by the institutions that are in place to have that job, because they were all created out of the old paradigm. So governments and businesses, their focus is not where the roots of the problems are. And the root of the problem is, of course, in our consciousness. So all of these leaders who are focused on how can we change our consciousness? How can we, as Anadeo was saying, how can we mature as a species so that we reach the next level of consciousness that is where the ideas will come from, where the solutions will come from, and where the ability to work together beyond our differences will come from, because that is not what we were brought up to do. So one thing that gives me great hope is a new book that's just come out from another of our evolutionary leaders, Dr. Jude Currivan. It's called Gaia, Her Story. And the thing that really struck me about that book is that Jude goes through the history of the planet. It's very broad in its view. And she recounts the previous great extinctions and how each time it looked like all of life was being extinguished on the planet. And every time it came back, and it came back at a higher form. So the dinosaurs who were on this planet way longer than we've been here, and they ruled the earth, right? And we all know the story about the asteroid that wiped them out and created this nuclear winter kind of scenario where those larger life forms couldn't survive anymore. She says, but guess what? It was the little mammals that were the breakfast of the dinosaurs, that they were able to survive in that dark time and come forth and produce a greater level of intelligence, a next step of evolution of life on the planet that ultimately led to us. So nature has a way of defaulting to life. So all that we've done to nature to extinguish life, nature just may surprise us and come rolling back and produce the next level of our evolution, even though it may look very, very hard from our point of view. And there may be a lot of suffering along the way, but something is going to emerge from that birth process. So that gives me hope.
Thank you for sharing about Jude's book. We actually have had her on the show a couple of times, but I didn't know what you just shared about the mammals, those little the dinosaur breakfast that survived. You know, we have one other guest scheduled for tonight, and he is in Spain sleeping right now, but Rev Deb and I did a pre-record interview with him. So do you want to tell our audience a little bit about Emmanuel, and then I'll play the video?
Yes, Emmanuel Kunzelman is another amazing visionary. And he is bringing forth a very special idea right now that he will tell you about in the interview that you're going to hear. He's already been doing beautiful work together with his wonderful wife, Laura Rose. They are the co-stewards of Greenheart, which is an organization that is for cultural exchange, international cultural exchange, bringing people from different parts of the world to experience other cultures. He's also a founder of Purpose Earth, and he is very much a proponent of the idea that as we come together in common purpose, we can find so much meaning for our own lives and also be making a contribution on a greater scale. So let's meet Emmanuel Kunzelman.
Okay, here we go. Welcome, everybody. This is really cool. We've got Rev Deb coming to us from Mexico. I'm in Sedona, Arizona, and Emmanuel is coming to us from Spain. So we're going to have an intriguing conversation about tonight's topic. Turning it over to you, Rev Deb, to tell us a little bit about your relationship to Emmanuel, what you want us to know.
Well, I'm always delighted to introduce the Global Peace Tribe to any of our evolutionary leaders, but particularly I'm delighted to have Emmanuel with us this evening, because when we speak about calling Team Light as we co-create our future, Emmanuel has really dedicated much of his life to doing just that. And he's taking on some very special projects right now. So his background is in many different things. He's associated with the Purpose Movement and with his beautiful nonprofit Greenheart International, which does cultural exchange programs, bringing people around the world to introduce them to different cultures. It's very special work. But I met him first during his association with Unity Earth and Purpose Earth. So maybe he'll tell us a little bit about Purpose Earth, or any other way in which right now, Emmanuel, you are calling Team Light and calling the team together so we can co-create our future.
Well, thank you, Deborah. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Scott, and Awakening World, and Team Light all over the world. So, a pleasure to be in the presence of all of you light beings coming together today. Yeah, you asked about Purpose Earth. Purpose Earth came about as a result of a merger between the Global Purpose Movement and Unity Earth. And we came up with Purpose Earth, combining Earth, purpose, and fundraising. So Purpose Earth is the fundraising and donor arm of Unity Earth, and we give 100% of all donations to grassroots projects around the world, working for light-bearing causes, we might say. So that's Purpose Earth all in one.
You know, we've actually supported Purpose Earth several times on this show.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, last month we raised money for the incredible things going on in Pakistan, the floods. And so thank you. You know, I love the work that Purpose Earth does, and some of the people, the individuals that you've supported, you know, how small grants help, you know, people in third world countries radically change their reality. So thank you so much for that work.
No, you're welcome.
I have a question for you. From your vantage point in Spain and Europe, what are you concerned about and what are you optimistic about?
Well, obviously, wherever one is this day and age, I think there's a great deal of concern about the numerous crises that are confronting our civilization right now, from climate change to nuclear threat to the threat to democracy, the breakdown of civil society. It's a very precarious situation, and I think it's worldwide. So not specific really to any one geographical region, but you know, I think humanity has fallen under the spell of the materialistic paradigm, and we've forgotten our divine source and lost track of our spirit and sold out to materialism in many ways, and that's showing its effect through climate and breakdown in many respects. So that's our huge preoccupation right now. What I'm optimistic about is that there is an innate immune response in the human body and the human body of all beings together here. And as our crisis deepens, our resolve and determination to solve the crisis increases. And it's a kind of like an innate immune response to a threatening disease. And that said, we're all coming together. This is Team Light. This is the worldwide movement of movements coming together as a response to these threats to our civilization, and finding ways to unify, work together, share resources, and transform society to the humane and compassionate society that it should be.
That was so
Wow.
eloquent.
You said that perfectly, Emmanuel. Thank you.
Well, you're
Thank you.
very
I
kind.
feel uplifted just hearing those words from you. Can you tell us a little bit about the name that you would like to give to that movement?
Yes, I can. I have proposed calling it the Holo Movement. It's a term that comes from physicist David Bohm. He wrote a book back in 1980 called Wholeness in the Implicate Order. He delved very deeply. He was a protege of Einstein, and he delved deeply into the essence of quantum reality and how it might all work together, particularly looking for a non-dual explanation of how we are all one when we're seemingly separate. And David Bohm came up with the term Holo Movement, which he described as the flow, the unbounded flow between the implicate order, which is essentially divine source, and the explicate order, which is material reality. And they are one, but seemingly quite different as we look at them. And so Bohm described that there was a flow between the energy source and the manifestation of physical reality that he called the holo movement, quite simply the movement of holistic energy, and that it flows back and forth. The implicate order inspires the creation of our universe. It manifests as the explicate order of our cosmos, and our cosmos now has produced people like ourselves now figuring this out, and we're taking the holo movement back towards the divine source to gain the inspiration and enlightenment we need to guide civilization forward at this time. So the holo movement seems to me like a very all-encompassing and apt term to call this movement of movements. It has very noble source from physicist David Bohm, and it seems to be a simple, easy word to describe it all. So it's kind of a pun, really. It's the physics of the quantum field in action, and it's a sociological branding for the coming together of the meta movement, the holo movement, all in one.
So in a sense, it has two meanings. It has this grand, larger meaning of the flow between the implicate and the explicate order of the universe, but also we are beginning to use it, this term holo movement, with the prefix like holistic, right, to describe what all of us are doing who are feeling this, dare I say, higher purpose.
Oh, you can definitely dare say that, I think.
Yeah. And I love your focus on purpose, because really in our materialist culture, purpose has become about striving to make a living and, get your children into the right schools so that they can make a living. It's become a very kind of a narrow thing. And you are suggesting something much more noble, that each of us has a purpose that is given to us through our destiny, our own destiny, to contribute to making the world a better place for ourselves and everyone else and all life that share the planet. So I'm very inspired by your vision, Emmanuel.
Well, thank you, Deborah. And indeed, purpose is the key here. Materialism has kind of taken over our sense of purpose. And, rightly so in many ways. We do need to worry about our survival and well-being. But then beyond that, once we do have the creature comforts necessary to get by in life, I think purpose takes on a much higher meaning. And, right now, the survival of our species is not a survival of the fittest social Darwinian term of struggle for existence. Right now, the survival of our species really will depend on us coming together as one in cooperation to solve our meta crisis. So when you see that context of humanity trying to figure out how 7.5 billion people can prosper, thrive, and survive on the planet all together, we need to work together as one. And that being our overriding purpose gives us all a very strong call to a new higher purpose of how do we collectively work together and make this happen. So purpose then takes on a divine characteristic, really, of how do we get ourselves back to wholeness and back to oneness and cooperate in the longer term. And I think that in itself, discovering that purpose will solve many of the problems society faces now, because many people are suffering from a lack of true purpose, and they know materialism is not the answer. And if we give them a sort of spiritual destiny of coming together and bringing humanity back to truth, beauty, and goodness, that's a purpose that can really fulfill our lives and make us feel better about everything we're doing if we are cooperating in the grand holo movement.
I so appreciate how eloquently you present all of this. since our audience is just getting to know you, what are some of your personal practices when the craziness that's happening out there is hitting? What do you personally do to come back to center or to move forward with your purpose?
Well, first and foremost, I would say meditation. I would recommend to everyone meditate every day. Don't let a single day go by without the joy, pleasure of meditating. And if you haven't meditated before, you can work on it. It's a practice like going to the gym. It takes some time. You need to work on it and be persistent. But in meditation is where we get back to the implicate order and understand the presence of divinity and connect with it. And so if you're having a stressful day, a bad time, you just got bumped off your flight in the airport, find a spot, go into a corner, and get back to the sense of self within you. So meditation, I think, is first and foremost spiritual practice for everyone. And along with that, it's important to eat well, sleep well, get exercise, be happy, see life from a joyful lens, and find your purpose. All those practices come together in a spiritual modality and can be manifested in many different ways.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And for people that are not used to meditating, it doesn't have to be this big religious thing at all. I personally do walking meditation. I find that when I sit down and I close my eyes, I get sleepy, right? So
Right.
traditional meditation has never been helpful for me, but I have a dog and I walk, and as I walk, I look at the sky. I look at the trees. I look at, even if I'm in a residential neighborhood, there's always something interesting to look at. And I try and notice the beauty of that. The beauty, there's God experiencing itself as that house, as that tree, as the sky. And so that's my form of meditation and coming back to center. So it doesn't have to be this complicated, learning how to, access the divine. There's a lot of ways to do it.
I'm glad you said that, Scott, because I remember once hearing the Dalai Lama respond to a similar question. He was asked, what do I do if I can't meditate? And he said, just look at the sky.
Yeah.
He's a master at finding simple answers to complex questions. And Scott, you brought together the Global Peace Tribe, and so that's who the audience is for this particular show. And I'm wondering whether, Emmanuel, you might have any message or some ways that you see individuals plugging into the Holo movement.
Well, we have an event coming up in Sedona in March where we're going to hopefully lay out the architecture for the Holo movement. So we'll be able to let people know from that time forward how they can specifically participate in it. So it's a little premature right now to make any concrete recommendations about participation, but it's on the way, and by next spring should be available at a meditation point near you. But in the meantime, I urge everyone to really dig deep and look for your spiritual purpose in life. Figure out what your karma is, what your true destiny is, and get in touch with it. And maybe change your life, change some of your habits, look for what your true calling really is. If you're not happy in life, it's because you're not in touch with your true purpose, and that's a calling to you to figure out what it is. So I would spend the time in the next few months just really contemplating what your true purpose is. What are your talents? What are your wishes? What makes you joyful? What can you combine all that together and do to contribute to the whole of movement, the grand cause of bringing humanity together? It takes some thought. So I would say do a little preamble to your whole movement contribution by figuring out how best you can contribute in your own purposeful way.
Emmanuel, I
Thank you
love
so
that.
much.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And ironically, by the way, sir, I am in Sedona right now, and we just had our Global Peace Tribe retreat in
Yeah, I know that.
Sedona last week. Yeah, so it was just preparation for the retreat that I'm looking forward to being at with you and Rev Deb and so many of the evolutionary leaders. And I'm sure a lot of our Global Peace Tribers will be there too.
Well,
So
Scott is definitely living his purpose.
Absolutely,
in doing
as
this
are you.
program.
Yeah,
So
and I think most
Emmanuel,
everyone
we're-
listening is too. So
We're
good for
delighted
you
to
all.
have you with us today.
Oh, well, thank you.
so much. And I'm sure Scott will be welcoming you back
Absolutely.
after this Holo Movement gathering so that the process starts to be underway, and all of the wonderful people in the audience here who have been delving into their purpose will be ready to jump on board. So thank you so much, Emmanuel, for being with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure. It's a joy to be here. And yeah, let's go, Light Team. We're gonna do this all
Go Team
together.
Light.
And Team Light. There we go. And let's bring in the light and shine it forth and make it happen all together
thank
as
you,
well.
sir. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Many blessings.
Isn't he an amazing human being?
Oh my gosh, they all are. I am so honored to be part of Evolutionary Leaders Network. And it's true, each person is just such a gem, such a really beautiful, beautiful soul. And you know, I'm noticing, I'll bring up everybody that I think we all have those equal parts caution and concern, and there's things we see going on, going really, but then when we're centered and we drop in and we look at the bigger picture, whether it's all the different analogies, the birth analogy from Ana Dea, the little mammals surviving the dinosaur analogy, you know, these are all ways. Now, I want to ask, the question that came in actually from our Facebook page, one of our Facebook pages, and that is for people that are deeply depressed. And she wasn't asking about herself, she was asking about a friend, but she said, I have a lot of friends that are so depressed by the world that, you know, I'm in paralysis or they're in paralysis. What are suggestions? What are ways that really can, if any of you have an answer to this, to support those people that are so depressed, so discouraged about the world, that maybe don't have the same level of optimism or bigger picture that we have? Do any of you have any suggestions for Jill? And thank you, Jill, for sending that question in via Facebook.
Well, I would say do what you love. And when we get depressed by looking at what is going down, that's because we're too attached to that. We need to let go of that attachment and put our attention on what brings us joy, what brings us renewal, what brings us connection, what brings us inspiration, and to balance it out with that. You know, I was meditating one day on this whole misinformation thing, and I was thinking, and I was outside sitting in my backyard. I have this place I meditate, and looking at the real world, which is the trees and the sky and the clouds, and thinking, you know, it's all misinformation. All the stuff that we're looking at is really, in a way, a false reality. And that is what is being taken away so that we can see what really matters. So I think when you get depressed, you're putting too much attention there. Go to what really matters to you. Go to what you're building.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful, yes. You know, I always say when people ask me my religion, I say my religion is the attitude of gratitude, you know, and it really is true. Just by being grateful, it lifts up our energy. I'm actually going to be hosting and moderating the new Louis Schwartzberg film, Gratitude, that's part of the Illuminate Film Festival virtual that's happening this week. So come watch Gratitude, the movie by Louis Schwartzberg, moderated by yours truly. That's happening on the Illuminate Film Festival.
There's
Rev. Deb?
something else I'd like to suggest to people who are depressed. I'd like to suggest what works for me, which is to let yourself be depressed.
Mhm.
I think that a lot of the suffering that we give ourselves is when we don't allow ourselves to feel our feelings. And if I'm depressed and I say, okay, it's going to be one of those days, let me make myself a nice cup of tea here because I'm depressed and it doesn't look good out there in the world. And it's understandable that I'm depressed. If I kind of give myself permission, it passes much more quickly than if I think I shouldn't be depressed. Everything in my world is good. Well, I have those thoughts too. And I'm a big believer in gratitude. Every morning I try to wake up with a thought of gratitude. But sometimes I go, wow, I'm depressed and everything's fine. So I need to let myself be. And anyway, it may not sound like a recipe for a cure, but somehow I feel that our society discourages us from having our feelings and letting them show and sharing them with our friends. And, if you tell your friend that you're depressed, your friend is going to be there for you and give you a hug or do something to help lift you up. So that's another thing I recommend is just share your feelings and don't beat yourself up about being depressed. There's a lot to be sad about in our world, and there's a lot of suffering. And being in a human body on a human journey, there are going to be challenges. So, yeah, Anadea just put in the chat, we cannot heal what we do not feel. So by all means, have your feelings. You're a human being. And in some ways, we need to be able to experience the darkness in order to bring forth the light. It's my 2 cents.
I think it's really important, because oftentimes I think that there's so much emphasis, especially in our kind of new thought movement, on joyfulness, gratitude, ascension. And for people that are kind of really in the human animal experience, really in the animal body, really in the human experience. We all are spiritual beings and we're all in animal bodies and we're all having a human experience. And we have good days, we have bad days, we have good years, we have bad years, or hard years, I should say, instead of bad. So, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's okay. Wherever we are, it's okay. Well, we're at that time where we're almost done, but I want to make sure that we spend a little time getting to know how to get more Anadea Judith and more Rev Deb and more Evolutionary Leaders Network. So let's start by
more Joe Martino.
And more Joe Martino for sure. So let's start by going to the Evolutionary Leaders Network. So tell us a little bit, as people go to the website here, what do you want to direct people to? Would it be to our moment of choice?
Well, that is one thing. Certainly you have heard me talk about our moment of choice before, about this very special book by 43 of our evolutionary leaders. And it's just it's a bouquet of vision. And so, of course, I would recommend it. I recommend it as it's a great Christmas present if you're starting your shopping early. So by all means, take a look at our moment of choice. I'd also like to invite people to sign the Call to Conscious Evolution. It's a way to be on our mailing list. And we've been focusing. We have a monthly newsletter called The Edge. And oh, Joe, let us see your friend.
She's been causing a ruckus in here.
Oh, what a
There she
beauty.
is.
What a
Beautiful.
There's something to get you out of any depression.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So anyway, the culture conscious evolution is not only a way to get on our mailing list to sign up, we ask you to put your vision when you sign up. And we've been posting some of those in our monthly newsletter, The Edge. And it's just so inspiring to see what all different people are doing in their lives to bring forth this holo movement that Emmanuel was describing. So that's another thing you can do through our website. And we always have a featured article on the homepage of our website. And the one that's up there now is by Deepak Chopra, who's one of the founders of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle. And interestingly, he's expressing a desire for quite the same thing that Emmanuel was describing. So we're definitely talking to him about that. He says he wants to enroll like 1 billion people in making these changes in the world through our consciousness. So that's very inspiring too. And of course, you can learn about all of our evolutionary leaders at evolutionaryleaders.net. So that's the site. And we'll keep you posted when the holo movement starts to emerge as well.
Beautiful. And a reminder, everybody, that what's always a good idea is when you go to the website, definitely, if you haven't already put your name and email address in there, do that so that Rev Deb and the people who run this amazing organization, the Swiss Synergy Foundation, can keep you updated on what's happening. And one of the things that we heard Emmanuel talk about is that here in Sedona in March is going to be a really special retreat, a very special event that Rev Deb is putting on. I'm going to support her as best as I can. And since we had such a great time in Sedona, I'm kind of thinking maybe we'll do another Global Peace Tribe retreat right before or right after to kind of, merge and combine and support somehow. So that's going on inside my
That would be wonderful. And the gathering that we're doing in Sedona is a small event because this is just a working meeting to try to create, as Emmanuel was saying, some of the architecture to support this. But hopefully when we come out of that meeting, that's when the real fun is going to start. That's when there will be a way for people to become part of this and to offer their vision and their creativity to this holo movement, which is already underway. We're just trying to give it visibility and a way to sign on and say, yeah, I'm part of that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'm going to bring Anadea up. And Anadea, you have a whole new book and project. Tell us about She Rises.
Well, this I have just finished. It's at the printer now. I don't have hard copies in my hand yet. It'll be out around Thanksgiving, so it's very close. And when I stopped traveling during COVID, this is what came through me. The idea that women lead differently than men. And in all of women's, advances that they've made and, being seen and earning money and having rights and all that, they haven't made much advance in leadership. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that women lead differently than men, and the archetypes of leadership have not really been recognized. So I started doing a card deck and writing about these archetypes. And I have like 38 archetypes. These cards are about this size, and you open them up. All the writing is on the card, like a greeting card, and they're told in the voice of the I, the she, and the you. The I is the evocation of that archetype speaking. The she tells you all about her, the history, the feminism, her status in the world, and then the you is the advice. And, it was just something I was playing with, but as I shared these with people, they were having such powerful results and awakening. Oh, women were saying, I've never been seen like this before. I've never recognized this as a power in myself. And so we have different archetypes. Here's one that people might recognize this person, our beloved Celestine, who passed away, and I made her on the healer card. And so I'm doing a big public event December 3rd, which actually coincides with my 70th birthday. And we are enacting these archetypes on stage with live music and lights and sound and all the works. And the whole project will be available for sale at that time, back from the printer.
Beautiful.
Well, that's exciting. And your inaugural event is going to be with Gary Malkin, yes?
Yes, it is.
Another
Yeah.
of our evolutionary
Gary.
leaders, and I believe he's been on the show as well.
Yeah, I love working with Gary. We really work well together.
That's going to be, I'm going to do my best to be there. And a lot of the people watching right now live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and specifically in Marin, Santa Rosa, Sebastopol. So everybody kind of mark this down because it's going to be quite an event. It's in Tiburon. And most of you that live in the Bay Area probably know this church. A lot of events go on there. So put it in your calendar, December 3rd. I don't see the time though. What's the time it's going to be?
Oh, it isn't on there. My goodness. How did that? Oh, 8 p.m. It is. It's
Oh,
on
yes, it is. Right, got it. Okay.
Doors open at 7:30. And because parking is limited and seating is first come, first served, definitely go get there early. We're going to start promptly at 8 because we have to be out of there by a certain time. So the show will start exactly at 8. So don't be late. And it's going to be a whole community event of members of the community. Deborah Giusti, who everyone knows, she's going to be the Empress. And maybe people know Elaine Kalila. She'll be the priestess. Eden Amadora is going to be the diva. There's many people that you might know and recognize that will be on stage in full living color. And it's going to be a wonderful community gathering and launch for this. And I'll open a bottle of champagne for my 70th birthday.
That sounds great. Well, I will have the Awakening World that night, but luckily I'll do it from Tiburon, and then I can zip up and get there about 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And Eden is a regular co-host on this show. So yeah, so she's a good friend. All right, well, it sounds great. We will see you on December 3rd, and let's go to Joe. Joe, you've got a really powerful thing you're doing. This is collective-evolution.com, igniting conversation and action toward a thriving future. And you're going to now be doing podcasts on a regular basis. People can grab your podcasts here. Tell us about the vision for this and some things that we can get by coming to your website, and how can we support you?
Yeah, for sure. So, the Collective Evolution started way back 2009, just wanting to talk about my experiences of what I was feeling as I was sort of answering the call, you could say. And it's birthed and evolved through different things over the last 15 years. Most recently, which is the iteration of the website you see there, is it's kind of becoming a container for, big picture, overarching ideas that very much align with the vision of what we started with. We've moved all of our more journalistic pieces to a new brand called The Pulse. But Collective Evolution, why I wanted to focus on the podcast is I'm sort of relaunching the podcast to sort of focus a number of episodes, about 9 of them, to explore a lot of sort of the big questions and big themes that relate to this predicament or crisis or, this feeling of a shift that is occurring. And I wanted to try and put enough sort of ideas out there that could help us feel a little bit more calm and a little bit more ease in what is happening through gaining a better understanding of the different pieces involved. So those podcast episodes are kind of, trying to do that. And the first 3 so far are up there. They've been getting some really nice response. So I'm pretty happy about that. But in terms of support, the question earlier, even of depression that came up, we talk about in our membership, which is something we do have. You can find it through the website. We do try and tackle some of this subject of, as Deb was pointing out, Deborah, this idea of sitting with our emotions and processing, the energy that can get stuck in our bodies from different experiences we have and stuff like that. And this concept of nervous system health is very much one of those items, one of those pieces to the overall story that I'm laying out in that podcast that relates to, why are we feeling depressed? What is going on within our system? How can we learn to track that? How can we learn to be with that? How can we learn to feel that and kind of understand how to let those emotions move through a little bit more deeply? So that was just a little touch on trying to answer that question just a smidge, while also talking a little bit about how people can find more about what we do.
Thank you, Joe, for mentioning the nervous system. I think that's part of our human anatomy that doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah.
And it's crying out for that now. So this is a time, and it's even possible that our nervous systems are being restructured.
Hmm.
People talk about us moving from carbon-based to crystalline-based life forms. And who knows what's happening in
Mhm.
that collective evolution. And I do love that title that you've coined, because we really are all in this together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it's been another wonderful show. And I always say that Omiskar is the alpha and the omega of the Global Peace Tribe. Things begin and end. And because music is the universal language. And we have a lot to absorb from these conversations. I see Mark wrote about how he'll sleep a little bit better tonight after listening to us. So I'm going to go to Omiskar to conclude us with.
Are we going to have a
musical-
chance to talk about tomorrow night?
Yes, we will do that after Omiskar's song. How's that?
Okay, perfect.
So what an enlivening and enriching discussion. I feel so deepened by tonight with Joe and Anadia and Deborah and Scott. Thank you so much for your perspectives. I feel more, and that is why I'm so dedicated to the awakening world and this movement. Thank you, thank you. And we do this, and we do this. Another dawn, another day. Innocent child coming your way. I've been wondering about my life. Oh yeah. Wondering about my state of mind. But then I heard, who is it for? If not for yourself. And how do you feel? And why do you cry, 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 cry? Shooby-doo-wop. The sun is warming up my mind. Ocean breeze blows me away. And yet still, I've been wondering about my life. Oh yeah. Wondering who will take my place. But then I heard, who is it for? If not for yourself. And how do you feel? And why do you cry, 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 cry? Who is it for? If not for yourself. How do you feel? And why do you cry, 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 cry?
Yeah.
for yourself. How do you feel? So come on, let's fly. Come on, let's fly.
As Mark was on tonight, Stanislavski.
Oh, Roger.
I love that song. And remember, please mute yourselves so that other than the people that are going to be speaking. That was wonderful. I love how peppy and upbeat, and yes, it's for us. Absolutely.
It is. It's it's interesting how the songs get chosen because they always segue so brilliantly into the topic. And this is about feelings, and let's come on, let's fly. Feel your feelings, and then let's fly. So, yeah.
Well, tomorrow night is going to be a very unique and special evening because for the first time in 2.5 years, I will not be with you. I am going to be hosting a very special film here in Sedona. It's the world premiere of a documentary about Amachí. But we are the Global Peace Tribe, and people come forward. And so Rev Deb and Omar Shar are going to be co-hosting, and beloved Trish Wright, who's been on an extended hiatus, is also going to come in. So you get Trish and Deb and Omar Shar
It's the dream
hosting.
team, right?
Absolutely. And I'm going to bring up our poster and let Rev Deb tell us a little bit about what we're going to be seeing tomorrow.
Tomorrow is going to be another very exciting evening. And one of the reasons for that is that among these evolutionary leaders whom you see on this top row here, 3 of them are just now coming out with brand new books, and 1 is working on a new film. So we're going to have Laura George with us, and she's the one who inspired this theme of this weekend of calling in Team Light. Her newest book is called The Light, and it is a recipe for addressing the future. It's a wonderful piece, and she'll tell you all about it. Will Keepin and Cynthia Bricks are a couple who have been working for a long, long time, particularly in the area of gender reconciliation. And they have written a book called Gender Equity and Reconciliation, 30 Years of Healing the Most Ancient Wound in the Human Family. And I'm very excited to have them on with Laura George, because that is one of the main points that she makes in her book, is that until we heal that wound of lack of gender equity and reconciliation, we can't move on the way we all want to as Team Light. So that's going to be very exciting to have them on together. We will also be featuring Bob Atkinson. And he's written a number of books, and he's one of my co-editors on our Moment of Choice. But his latest book is called A New Story of Wholeness, an experiential guide for connecting the human family. And that is a topic that has come up this evening that Joe was talking about, and Emmanuel and Anadea, that it is that moving into the experience of the oneness whom we are as a human family that is going to take us to the next stage of our evolution. Young Kasia Sequoia Slavner is a filmmaker who is currently working on a film called 1.5 Degrees of Peace, because she profoundly sees the connection between the climate crisis and peace. So Scott did a wonderful interview with her, and we'll also be showing this trailer for this film project she's working on. And we have Dr. Reverend Mama Ivy with her amazing voice, and she will be doing some sound healing for us, as well as speaking into her visions for the future. And Omar Shar will be here too, and continue to sing for us, as well as supporting us technically. Thank you so much in Scott's absence.
It's going to be a beautiful show, and I'm looking forward to Mama Ivy coming and taking us through a sound healing journey. That'll be great.
And then we'll be meeting Lakshmi. So tell us about her.
Lakshmi Del
Scott.
Sesto. Lakshmi is one of my dearest friends. She's been on the show a few times with Kali's Angels. So as always, we'll have wonderful music. Yeah, Kali's Angels are great, but Lakshmi is awesome. So that's tomorrow night.
So Team Light, be here with us tomorrow.
Absolutely. And there's my dog, Jasmine Bear. She popped up her head there for a second. Hey, Jasmine, you want to say hi to everybody? There you go. All right.
A big thank you to Anadea Judith and to Joe Martino for joining us live, and to Emmanuel Kunselman for being with us from Spain, even in the middle of the night. Thank you all. You're
Absolutely.
treasured evolutionary leaders.
Yes,
I'm
thank
going
you
to
so much.
gallery view so we can see everybody. Turn on your cameras and twinkle and say goodbye, everybody. Good night. See you.
Great
See you this
hosting,
weekend.
Scott and Rev Deb.
And Scott, have a great night tomorrow.
Thank you. I'm excited. And I might drop in. They've allowed me to set up my computer. I'm going to have a quiet little room, so I'll probably come running in at the very, very end. So
We might let you in.
that's true. That's true. You'll have the hosting power. So you may or may not let me in. We'll see.
No,
Take care.
It'll
Much
be
love.
enjoying.